Welcome back to another Film Geek movie review. Today, after the old day job, I am off to check out the new heist film, The Mastermind. The Mastermind is written and directed by Kelly Reichardt, and it's starring Josh O'Connor, Sterling Thompson, and Alina Haim. It tells a story of a man and two cohorts who wander into an art museum one day, steal 4 paintings, and then just literally walk out the front door. This film looks like it's going to be a very interesting little heist film, because in this movie, it's not necessarily the heist that's the main focus, it's actually everything that happens after the heist. It's about how in God's green earth you're supposed to just get away with this. And also, do you know anything about fencing the product? Do you know what to do after you actually pull off this crime? This looks like one of those movies where just normal people decide that they're going to try to do some kind of criminal activity. Something kind of like Breaking Bad, but it doesn't look like it's going to be on that big of a scale. But you know what, guys? It's enough of me sitting here jibber-jabbering on. It is time for me to get out the door, because first off, I need to get to work, and then I'm off to see The Mastermind. Welcome back, just getting home from The Mastermind. And guys, in all honesty, I quite enjoyed this film. I had a lot of fun with it, and I was very entertained. However, I'll be perfectly honest with you, I don't necessarily think this is going to be everybody's cup of tea. So let's get this party started, shall we? We're going to get things started with, well, I'm not going to call them negatives this time, because I did quite enjoy this film, and I really don't have anything negative to say about it. But I do think that there are some things about this film that aren't going to set right with some people. They're not going to really enjoy the way the story's told and all. So I'm going to call this mixed feelings, and then we're going to move into positives to end the video on the ever so important high note. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is just the pacing of this film. Now, this movie, in my opinion, was not necessarily a slow burn. I was really intrigued by this whole story, and I fell right into it. But I could definitely see where people do find this film a very slow burn. It is low action. There isn't a lot going on. And in all honesty, if you watch the trailer for this film, it does make the film seem like it's going to be a lot more lighthearted. Now, there are some jokes and all in the film, which I wouldn't necessarily even call them jokes. I would call them more like situational comedy, just things that kind of happen that are a little bit on the funny side. But I wouldn't necessarily say that there is outright jokes and comedy in this film, but the trailer does kind of present it that way. It does seem like it's going to have a much more comedic vibe to it. This movie does play really more into the drama category of things. And if you're someone like myself who does love a nice crime heist film, this movie is not Ocean's 11, okay? This is not the Italian heist. In fact, the heist portion of this film is just a very small portion of the overall story of this movie. This film, more or less, is almost a character study on the main character and how he's dealing with all of the events that happen right after he commits this crime. So if that's not something that you're too awful intrigued by, I can completely understand, because in all honesty, the heist of this film is one of the least interesting parts of this movie. I love the way that it was presented and the way they did everything, but in my opinion, everything that happens after that is really where this movie shines and where its real core of the story and its characterization really comes from. Now, in all honesty, I will have to say that I do feel that there are some things about this movie that could have been slimmed down a little bit. The movie's about an hour and 50 minutes long, and it doesn't really feel boring, and it doesn't really feel like it's dragged out a whole lot, but the movie does a lot of very quiet moments. And what I mean by that is the way that the things work, where there'll just be a moment where it's no dialogue or anything going on, and we're just kind of watching the events happen. This is kind of like those moments in movies where people say stuff like, well, it's not like real life. We never see people go to the bathroom and do normal things. Well, this movie, they do that. They do normal things. There is almost 10 minutes of this movie where it's just him climbing up a ladder and stashing the painting somewhere, and just you're sitting there the whole time like, this guy's gonna kill himself or something. What's going on here? No, it's just him putting away the paintings. But everything is very quiet and very just kind of slow how it's all working, but it also feels very realistic and exactly how people who really don't know what they're doing would probably do something like that. But again, these are things that are generally not found in films. They normally cut stuff like this out. There's also some really cool camera work and all, but unfortunately to some folks, they're going to feel like it slows the film down and they're just going to want to get on with it. But other than that, guys, I honestly feel like this is an extremely solid film and I had a really great time. So let's get into those positives, shall we? The first thing I want to talk about is just the performance. Now, this movie is pretty much just Josh O'Connor for the entire thing. There are other characters and all, but he is the main focus of this movie, and I believe that he is on screen for the entire film. I don't think there's a moment where he's not there, and he does an outstanding job with this character. This is a very interesting way of basically telling the character development in the story. The movie doesn't necessarily outright tell you exactly why all this is happening. You kind of get clues and everything to what's going on. It's basically how the movie is presented is you're basically a fly on the wall. Now, I don't mean that they utilize shaky cam or handheld cam at all moments to make you feel like you're there floating around and all. No, it's more like you just are standing in a corner and you're watching the events unfold. I really love the camera use in this film also. When I was talking about those quiet moments, the reason why those moments are so intriguing is the camera work. There's one moment in particular, and this is not a spoiler, this is just style. There is a moment where he's at some friends when he's out, running away from the cops basically. And so he's held up with some friends, just hanging out, trying to stay away from the police basically. And so he's outside smoking a cigarette. They have a sliding door and he's in the backyard. So the camera's in the backyard with the main character. Well, then he walks back into the house and closes the screen door and closes the sliding door once he finishes his cigarette. The camera never leaves that one spot. He goes in, we watch him go into the house, he shuts the door, and then we watch him do a few things inside the house from outside the house through the window. And I just thought that was a really neat little technique. It just made us feel like we were voyeurs just sitting here watching all of this stuff unfold. And I thought it was a really neat trick that they threw into this film. There are some funny moments. I'm not going to say that, again, this movie is not a comedy, but there are some definite moments where people did chuckle in the audience. So there is some fun like that. I really enjoyed just the way that this movie was presented and put together. I also like the way this film wraps up. It doesn't bog you down or anything. It just gets to the core of what's going on, and you know what? Just like this way this film starts, it ends. That is the way it goes. You start this movie off in the thick of things. You start off where he's kind of planning the heist and all, and then you just go right into it. Not that a lot of planning was necessarily needed in all of this. One thing I also forgot was this film takes place in 1970, and also the filmmakers do an excellent job making everything not just look and feel like the 70s, but the film itself is presented with a color palette that really looks like a film that may have been made in the 1970s also. All in all, guys, I have to say that this was a really good time. I enjoyed this movie. I had a good time sitting there in the cinema watching this film, but I can definitely see where some people would probably enjoy this movie a lot more if they sat at home and watched it on a streaming service. But for me personally, I say if you're a big fan of just a very technically well-made film and you want to see some excellent acting and a uniquely presented story, Oh, I'm almost wrapping up, and I forgot to talk about one of my favorite things about this film, and that is the musical score. The musical score is pretty much a jazz quartet in the background for most of the entire film. And what's really neat about this is it's almost like the movie was playing, and then this jazz group is just like playing the music as they're watching things unfold on the screen. It's almost like we're watching a movie and also getting like a free jazz jam at the same time. And it works so freaking well. The music of this movie almost becomes its own character, like almost like a narrator, telling you what's going on next. In the tense moments, the music matches the energy. When you're in more of a lighthearted moment, matches the energy. Depressing moment, so on and so forth. You see where I'm going? I was so intrigued by the musical score of this film. As the credits were rolling, I sat there for the whole credits so I could finish the dang jazz song. I loved it. Well, so anyways, guys, there you go. If this sounds interesting to you, this film is being released this Friday, October 17th. Get out there, check this film out. I know there's a lot of neat stuff coming out this weekend, but again, if you're not into horror and the scary stuff that's coming down the wire, this is a fun film to get out and see, or maybe just wait for it to come back on streaming. Like I said, if you're someone who doesn't necessarily like a slow burn in theaters, definitely check this movie out, because it is just a masterclass in filmmaking, in my opinion. Alright guys, well thanks again for checking out the Film Geek. If you liked what you saw here today, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, and give me the old thumbs up so I know you like what you're seeing. And if there's one more thing you can do, folks, that is keep watching movies. You know I'm gonna.